What if I told you that the smartest, most ruthless critic you will ever face in your entire life is, well, you at 3 in the morning?
Oh, yeah. We have all been there.
Right. I mean, you know the exact scenario I'm talking about. You're lying in bed, you're theoretically resting, but your brain has just decided to construct this simulation.
A very unhelpful simulation.
Exactly. A simulation so structurally complex and so terrifying in its emotional accuracy that it leaves you waking up with your heart just pounding against your ribs.
Yeah, the classic 3 a.m. panic.
And it's not the classic monster chasing you through the woods anymore, right?
Yeah.
It is a highly specific, avant-garde theater production designed entirely to put your deepest insecurities on trial.
It really is. It's the ultimate internal audit. And what's fascinating is how evolutionary biology actually explains this.
Oh, wait, biology? How so?
Yeah, so there's this framework in psychology called threat simulation theory. It was originally proposed by a cognitive neuroscientist named Antti Revonsuo.
Okay.
And the idea is that dreams evolved as a biological defense mechanism, like a safe virtual reality where our ancestors could practice escaping predators or surviving the elements.
That makes sense. Like a flight simulator for cavemen.
Exactly. But the modern human being isn't usually worried about saber-toothed tigers anymore, you know? Our apex predators today are, well, there's social exclusion, financial ruin, and the crushing weight of professional inadequacy.
Wow. Yeah, that hits a little too close to home.
Right. So our brain adapts the simulation, it stops generating wolves, and instead it generates a boardroom where you don't know the answers.
Or a social gathering where you are just fundamentally exposed.
Yes, exactly.
And today we are going to walk through what might be the most meticulously designed threat simulation I have ever encountered. We have a really highly detailed source text for this deep dive.
And it's a wild one.
It really is. It's a translated Japanese dream journal entry, and it's famously titled The Architecture of Humiliation and the Successor's Dream.
Which is just a fantastic title, by the way.
So good. And what makes this text so compelling is the sheer bizarre cast of characters that show up. I mean, we are talking about appearances from famous Japanese gaming YouTubers,
Right.
a cameo by the world-renowned self-help guru Tony Robbins.
Of all people.
I know, right? And eventually a brilliant theoretical physicist in a wheelchair.
Which, I mean, if you just hear that list, it sounds like an absurdist comedy sketch on the surface.
Totally, like a weird late-night TV show.
Yeah. But when you apply the lens of cognitive mapping, which is the way the brain uses familiar cultural symbols to map out abstract internal anxieties, it suddenly becomes this absolute masterclass in psychological self-torture.
So our mission today is to dissect this surreal text layer by layer. We're going to look at the recurring themes of this dream. You know, the juxtaposition of extreme, untouchable wealth against fundamental human vulnerability.
And how the subconscious constructs these elaborate architectures of humiliation just to process real-world survival anxiety.
Yes, I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, every seemingly chaotic detail in this journal is going to connect to a profound, universal human fear. So, let's look at how the brain sets the stage.
Let's do it.
The text begins with a wildly evocative image. The dreamer finds themselves on a midsummer beach. The sun is beating down, but as they look out at the ocean, something is profoundly wrong.
Right. It's not a normal ocean.
No. The entire sea, all the way to the horizon, is covered in a thick layer of transparent nylon or vinyl.
Which is such a striking visual of absolute containment. I mean, the ocean is historically our greatest symbol of the untamable, the infinite. They're deeply natural.
And here it's been shrink-wrapped.
Exactly. Shrink-wrapped.
And the dreamer actually walks out onto it. They step onto this transparent nylon covering the waves, and they describe the tactile sensation as squishy.
Squishy.
Yeah. They can feel the rhythm of the tide moving beneath their feet. They can look right down through the plastic and see the water, but they are physically unable to touch the actual sea.
The physical barrier.
And sitting right there on top of this plastic sheeting over the sand are a PlayStation 5 and a pair of high-end gaming headphones.
See, the juxtaposition there is critical. You have the ultimate natural environment being smothered by an industrial synthetic, right?
Yeah.
And it's serving as a platform for hyper-modern indoor technology.
It is a complete inversion of the natural order.
Exactly.
So the dreamer puts the headphones on, and immediately they hear voices over the audio feed. Specifically, the voices of two very famous Japanese gaming YouTubers.
Right, a duo known as Anija Dija,
Yeah.
which roughly translates to brother and brother.
Yeah. And through that strange inherent logic of the dream state, you know how in dreams you just suddenly know things?
Oh yeah, the instant downloaded context.
Exactly. The dreamer instantly understands the context of the entire scene.
Yeah.
These incredibly wealthy YouTubers have rented out this private beach for a luxury vacation.
And they paid to have the entire ocean covered in plastic.
Purely so their video game consoles and controllers wouldn't get wet while they play games outside.
I mean, it is the ultimate manifestation of the modern wealth gap, literally manifested by the dreaming mind.
It's insane.
Let's think about what YouTubers represent in the modern socioeconomic consciousness.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
For a long time, video games were associated with a lack of productivity.
Yeah.
They were the thing you did to avoid adult responsibilities.
Right, like stop playing games and do your homework.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we now live in an attention economy where individuals can amass staggering multi-generational wealth simply by broadcasting their leisure time.
Yeah.
To the working-class adult brain grinding away at a traditional job, this feels like a glitch in the matrix. It feels deeply unfair.
Okay, let's unpack this, because my first instinct is to view the squishy ocean purely as like an environmental anxiety metaphor.
Sure, pollution, plastics in the ocean.
Right. But looking at the context of the gaming setup, it feels way more like a commentary on excess. Because the dreamer sits down in front of this PlayStation, wanting to play the game, wanting to participate in this incredible luxury, but they can't.
Because there's no monitor.
Right. There is no screen anywhere on the beach.
And if we look at the clinical framework of threat simulation, the missing monitor is the operative mechanism of the whole scene.
How so?
The brain is simulating the feeling of localized, tactile alienation. It's not about the environment at all. It's about agency.
Agency.
Yeah. The YouTubers possess such a cartoonish level of agency that they can literally alter the geography of the planet for minor convenience. They pave the sea.
Wow. Yeah, they paved the sea so their PS5 wouldn't get a splash of water.
Exactly. The dreamer, conversely, possesses zero agency.
Right. They are standing on the plastic, looking at the water, holding the controller, but they are denied the decryption key.
The decryption key, I like that.
It reminds me of the modern corporate experience for a lot of mid-level employees. You know?
Absolutely.
You are brought into the beautiful glass building, you are given the expensive laptop and the corporate card, you are told you're a part of the team.
But when the actual high-level decisions are being made, you realize your laptop doesn't have access to the server.
Exactly. You are in the room, but you are not in the game.
That is an incredibly accurate parallel to what the subconscious is rendering here. In psychology, we talk about the glass cliff, or the invisible barriers to upward mobility.
Right.
The squishy texture of the ocean is the brain's way of giving physical, tactile feedback to that exact feeling of alienation.
It's squishy because you can feel it giving way, but it never breaks.
Yes. You can feel the shape of success. You can see it right underneath you.
Right.
But there is a synthetic, impenetrable barrier keeping you from actually immersing yourself in it.
And the lack of the monitor ensures that the dreamer remains a spectator in a world where they desperately want to be a player.
Precisely. It is physical exclusion from the realm of success.
But, I mean, as agonizing as it is to be locked out on the beach, we know the brain doesn't just rest on one anxiety, right?
Oh, no, it iterates. It loves to iterate.
So my question is, if physical exclusion is the first test, what happens when the dreamer's mind decides to try the exact opposite approach? What happens when you're suddenly invited in? Because we move from the bright, sunny, squishy physical exclusion on the beach to an intense, suffocating psychological exposure indoors.
And the transition from the beach to the interior room is a major pivot. It goes from macroeconomic anxiety to microsocial performance anxiety.
Right.
The physical barrier is removed, and it is replaced by an arena of interpersonal evaluation.
And it happens so fast in the text. The scene in the journal shifts abruptly. Two women in bikinis approach the dreamer on the plastic-covered beach and casually invite them to a party.
Just like that.
Just like that. The dreamer follows, and the environment instantly morphs. The vast, open midsummer beach is gone. They are now inside a dimly lit room, glowing with heavy red neon lights.
A very different vibe.
Completely. It is furnished with a massive table and an incredibly luxurious sofa. It radiates this very specific aura of exclusive VIP adult indulgence.
Yeah.
And then the dreamer realizes they are completely naked.
Because of course they are. Classic dream trope.
Right. And a naked woman initiates a 69 position with them right there on the sofa.
Now, on the surface, if someone were just skimming, a generic dream dictionary, they might categorize this as wish fulfillment.
Right, like a fantasy.
Yeah, fantasy of desirability and elite access.
Which makes what actually happens so much worse.
Oh, yeah.
The source text goes out of its way to explicitly state that this was not an erotic experience. The dreamer registers absolutely zero physical arousal.
Interesting.
And that's because while this highly intimate act is supposed to be happening, the dreamer realizes they are being watched. There is an audience.
The worst kind of nightmare.
Truly. Another woman is lounging nearby on the sofa, surrounded by a group of men, and she looks down at the dreamer. And with a tone of utter condescension, she asks out loud if the dreamer actually knows how to properly caress female genitals.
So the intimacy is instantly weaponized.
Yep.
It
Yes.
ceases to be an act of connection and becomes an examination.
And the dreamer, trying to salvage their pride and prove they belong in this sophisticated adult space, confidently tries to demonstrate that yes, they know the mechanics. They know what they are doing.
They take the bait.
They completely take the bait, but the absolute second they try, the woman who is physically on top of them stops, laughs right in their face, and says, "Totally wrong."
Just brutal. And the reaction of the room.
Oh, it erupts. The surrounding crowd of men and women, this entire room of elite partygoers, starts clapping and howling with laughter at the dreamer's failure.
Wow.
And then the physical sensation shifts. The woman on top begins repeatedly forcing her face onto the dreamer. But the journal describes the feeling not as sexual contact, but as the distinct crushing sensation of being stomped on from above.
Stomped on.
Yeah, it is just pure, unadulterated humiliation.
Here is where the genius of the subconscious truly shines, I think. Because why does the brain construct a scenario of intimacy only to subvert it into a public execution?
Right, why not just have a normal nightmare?
Well, we have to look at the concept of the panopticon in modern adult life.
The panopticon?
Yeah, so the philosopher Michel Foucault used the idea of the panopticon, which was originally a prison design where inmates can always be watched, but never know exactly when they are being watched.
Oh, okay, so they have to police themselves.
Exactly. Foucault used that to describe modern society. We are constantly under the assumption of surveillance, constantly performing our competence.
So the red neon room is essentially the VIP panopticon.
Precisely. In this sequence, the sexual act is merely a placeholder for any highly complex, unwritten adult social dynamic.
I see.
When we enter a new high-stakes environment, whether that is a corporate boardroom, a high society charity gala, or even, just trying to navigate the dating pool in our 30s, there is a pervasive, terrifying anxiety that everyone else in the room was given a rule book that we somehow missed.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I look at the phrase "totally wrong," followed by the sensation of being stomped on. The dreamer didn't just fail. They were punished for having the audacity to try and fake it. It's the nightmare of the imposter. You walk into the Michelin star restaurant, you pretend you know how to pronounce the French wine on the menu, and the sommelier just laughs out loud and points out to the whole dining room that you have no idea what you're doing.
That's a perfect analogy. And the crowd clapping is the ultimate confirmation of your outsider status.
Just to rub it in.
Right. In psychology, there is a distinct difference between guilt and shame.
Oh, really? What's the difference?
Guilt is the feeling that you did something bad. Shame is the feeling that you are something bad.
Wow. Okay.
The red neon room is an architecture designed purely to generate shame. The dreamer believed they possessed the requisite adult knowledge to operate in this elite space. But the rules of the elite space are rigged to be unknowable to the outsider.
So it's a rigged game.
Entirely. The sexual failure is a literal dominance display by the psyche, reminding the ego that it does not possess the cultural or social capital to survive here.
It's devastating because there is no defense against it. They are physically pinned down, naked, and being laughed at. And you would hope that having reached this peak of vulnerability, the brain's internal circuit breaker might trip,
You'd hope so.
that the dreamer would wake up and escape the simulation. But the threat simulation theory you mentioned earlier suggests the brain wants to test every possible vector of attack, right?
Exactly. The brain isn't done. It is established that the dreamer lacks financial agency on the beach, and it is established that the dreamer lacks social and interpersonal fluency in the neon room.
Right.
The natural next step in the hierarchy of human anxiety is to test the dreamer's core intellectual and professional worth.
Which brings us to the most uncomfortable part of this text, honestly. The women in the bikinis suddenly vanish. The heavy red neon lights fade out, and the room transforms from a sexy underground lounge into a massively expansive, brightly lit, formal event space.
A total 180.
Yeah, it is a high-class party, but it's not a party for influencers or socialites. It is a gathering of world-renowned intellectual titans, self-help gurus, and mental success coaches.
Oh boy.
And sitting right there, holding court, is the undisputed king of the modern self-improvement industry, Tony Robbins.
Which is just wild. The inclusion of Tony Robbins is a brilliant, highly specific act of cognitive mapping by the subconscious.
It really is. And the dreamer looks down and realizes they are no longer naked. They are wearing a sharp suit. They are sitting on a luxury sofa with a glass of wine, supposedly acting as a peer among these giants of self-mastery.
They've leveled up, or so they think.
Exactly. The structure of this gathering is very dignified. The guests are taking turns standing up and delivering speeches, sharing their wisdom and their philosophies on success. Eventually, the rotation makes its way to the dreamer. It is their turn to speak.
The spotlight is on.
But the instant the dreamer prepares to deliver their profound insight, the entire room begins to giggle.
Not laugh, giggle.
Right. It's not the roaring theatrical laughter of the neon room. It is a quiet, condescending, knowing giggle. The dreamer looks over, and Tony Robbins is literally covering his mouth with his hand, looking sideways at the dreamer, trying to hide a smirk.
Oof. The humiliation is compounding. The failure from the previous room has somehow contaminated this new, supposedly professional space.
Yes, the dreamer intuitively understands that Tony Robbins and the rest of the gurus are giggling because they somehow already know about the sexual and social failure that just happened in the neon room.
They know the dreamer's a fraud.
Exactly. But the speeches continue, and the circle comes around for a second round. This time, the dreamer is desperate. They are absolutely determined to defend their intellect, to deliver a rebuttal so powerful that it wipes the smirks off the gurus' faces.
They're going to prove them wrong.
Right. They stand up, they formulate an amazing speech in their head, they open their mouth, and no voice comes out.
The mechanism of communication completely fails.
Completely. Instead of words, only a pathetic, empty hissing sound escapes their lips, just air leaking out.
Oh, that's rough.
The room of titans sees this catastrophic display, and they start laughing even harder. But this is the moment in the text that completely derailed me.
Okay.
It is a profoundly twisted psychological reaction. The dreamer notes in the journal that despite the agony of having no voice and being openly mocked, they suddenly started to feel happy.
Wait, happy?
Yes. They felt a surge of joy simply because Tony Robbins was finally paying attention to them. His eyes were on the dreamer. And so in a split-second decision, the dreamer actively decides to lean into the failure.
Oh, no.
They intentionally start leaking more air from their mouth, puffing their cheeks and making foolish noises, purposefully playing up their own degradation just to keep the elite crowd laughing.
Wow. That is the crux of the entire dream. That moment of intentional self-sabotage is the most revealing mechanism we've seen yet.
I have to challenge this, though, because it violates our basic understanding of the fight or flight response.
So,
When a human being is cornered and attacked, we are biologically programmed to either get angry and fight back or to retreat and run away in shame. We aren't programmed to do a tap dance for the predator, right?
right.
Why lean into the embarrassment? To me, the only waking world equivalent I can think of is the tragic dynamic of the middle school class clown.
Oh, the class clown.
Yeah, you know the kid I'm talking about. The
Yeah.
kid trips, drops their lunch tray, and the whole cafeteria laughs. In that horrible sinking moment, the kid realizes people are laughing at them, not with them.
Yeah.
But instead of quietly picking up the tray and slinking away to process the shame, they decide to slip on a banana peel on purpose. They make it a routine.
Right.
Because their brain has calculated that receiving intensely negative, mocking attention is still somehow mathematically better than receiving no attention at all.
Your class clown analogy is a great starting point, but we need to elevate it to the adult sphere, specifically the professional and existential spheres, to really understand what the brain is doing here.
Okay, lay it on me.
Let's look at Tony Robbins as a cultural symbol. Why him? What does he represent?
Success, motivation, firewalking.
Right. He is not just a rich man. He is the high priest of the modern religion of self-optimization. His entire brand, his entire cultural footprint is built on the promise of discovering your inner giant, finding your authentic voice, and asserting absolute control over your destiny. He is the avatar of supreme, unwavering confidence.
Right. You go to his seminars when you feel weak and you leave feeling like you can punch through a brick wall. He is the antidote to the imposter syndrome.
Exactly. So what does it mean when the subconscious takes the ultimate symbol of empowerment and casts him as the chief tormentor.
Oh, wow.
It represents the punishing shadow side of toxic positivity and the self-help industry. There is a concept in Lacanian psychoanalysis involving the big other.
The big other.
Yeah. The big other is the overarching symbolic order of society that dictates what we are supposed to desire and how we are supposed to behave.
Got it.
For the modern professional, the big other demands constant growth, constant networking, flawless execution, and unshakable confidence. Tony Robbins is the face of that demand in this dream.
And when the dreamer tries to meet that demand, their voice literally disappears.
Yes, the loss of voice is the loss of logos. The ability to reason, to persuade, to assert your very existence. In a room where voice is the only currency that matters, the dreamer is bankrupt.
Bankrupt. Man.
Now, to address your question about why the dreamer leans into the humiliation.
Right, the tap dance.
It is a desperate attempt to resolve what we call Lacanian lack. The dreamer realizes, with devastating clarity, that they can never compete on the level of the gurus. They can never deliver a speech that will impress Tony Robbins. The gap in competence is just unbridgeable.
So if you can't join the apex predators, you volunteer to be the prey, just so you get to stay in the ecosystem.
Precisely. If the dreamer stops leaking air and quietly sits down, the gurus will look away. The dreamer will become invisible, which, to the ego, is akin to death. By intentionally playing the fool, the dreamer creates a role for themselves. They become the court jester. The terrifying insight here is that the human desire for proximity to greatness, the craving for validation from the elite hierarchy, is so intoxicating that we will actively participate in our own subjugation just to feel seen by the people we perceive as our superiors.
You see this in corporate environments all the time, honestly.
Oh, constantly.
The boss makes a slightly demeaning joke at the expense of a junior employee during a meeting. And instead of defending themselves, or even just staying neutral, the junior employee laughs the loudest and starts making self-deprecating jokes to keep the boss amused.
They're leaking air to keep the spotlight on them.
Exactly. They are leaking air. It is a brutal self-indictment by the dreamer's subconscious. They realize their pursuit of success isn't about mastery at all. It's a desperate, hollow need for external validation.
And this realization pushes the ego to its absolute breaking point. The threat simulation has proven that the dreamer cannot survive at the bottom of the hierarchy, the beach, and it has established that they can't survive the middle of the hierarchy, the neon room, or the top of the hierarchy, the party. The system overloads.
Which triggers the next architectural shift. Having been completely stripped of their dignity, the dreamer's mind basically hits the emergency eject button.
Abort mission.
Yeah. It violently shifts the setting to a place where the dreamer can finally, artificially, be the one in charge.
It's the psychological defense mechanism of regression. When the adult world becomes too complex and threatening, the mind retreats to a simpler state.
And the transition is abrupt. The dreamer suddenly realizes they are no longer sitting on the sofa among the gurus. They have been moved to a completely separate room. The text describes it as a dark room with no walls, functioning almost like a stage set right next to the main event.
Like a split stage in a play.
Exactly. In fact, the bright, successful party of gurus is still perfectly visible right next door. The dreamer is now standing in this dark space, and they understand that they are working as a staff member in a childcare facility. There are 3 small children's study desks lined up in the gloom.
The contrast is jarring. From titans of industry to small children.
Very. The dreamer is aware that this facility mixes neurotypical children with developmentally disabled children. And the dreamer's grand task, their entire purpose in this new space, is to hand out clipboards to the kids so they can play.
Clipboards.
But the details of these clipboards are so incredibly specific. These aren't normal clipboards holding blank paper and crayons. The text specifies that these clipboards contain 2 sheets of plastic. One completely black and one transparent red.
Oh.
The dreamer explicitly identifies these as those translucent plastic study sheets students use to memorize vocabulary.
Yes. The red sheet method. Very common in Japanese education and increasingly elsewhere too.
Oh, really? How does it work?
You place the red translucent sheet over a textbook to hide the answers that are printed in red ink, allowing you to test your memory.
Right. And the dreamer even notes internally during the dream that it is a complete mystery why young children would want to play with intense study tools instead of actual toys.
Because it's not a toy.
Right, but in the logic of the dream, the kids are desperate for them. So a small boy approaches the dreamer, crying his eyes out because he has lost his clipboard. Another male staff member leans over to the dreamer and vaguely mentions that this specific crying boy is developmentally disabled.
What is the dreamer's reaction to that information?
This is where it gets highly analytical. The dreamer looks closely at the crying boy's face and internally disagrees with the coworker.
Interesting.
The dreamer notes that the boy possesses the distinct facial features of Down syndrome, which contradicts the other staff member's broad, imprecise label. The dreamer keeps this diagnostic critique entirely to themselves, hands the crying boy a brand new clipboard with the red and black sheets, and the boy stops crying and goes back to his desk.
The dreamer successfully imposes order.
Yes, but I want to stop and look at the actual architecture of this room. The hyper-specific detail of the red and black study sheets being used as toys. Why repurpose tools of academic stress as playthings?
That's a great question.
And furthermore, why the internal monologue about the coworker's inaccurate diagnosis? Is the dreamer retreating to this dark room to essentially act as the Tony Robbins for these children? Are they trying to fix these kids with study tools to reclaim the competence they just lost next door?
Your intuition is spot on. Let's look at the mechanics of cognitive mapping here. The brain is taking objects from the dreamer's past specifically, objects associated with academic pressure, rote memorization, and the anxiety of getting the right answer.
Right.
And it's injecting them into a child's playroom. The red study sheet is not a toy of imagination or creativity. It is a tool of rigid, structured evaluation. It is a mechanism designed to hide information and force the user to produce the correct data.
It's the physical embodiment of a test.
Exactly. The dreamer, having just profoundly failed the ultimate unwritten adult test in the bright room next door, retreats into the shadows to administer a test they know they can control. They assume the role of the adult caretaker because it grants them automatic, unearned authority. They don't have to be smart. They just have to be bigger than the children.
Yeah.
And that internal critique of the coworker, that is a desperate, almost tragic reflex of a wounded ego.
I might be a clown to Tony Robbins, but at least my diagnostic terminology is more precise than this random guy's.
Yes. The dreamer has been stripped of all intellectual dominance in the bright room, so they scavenge for the tiniest, most pathetic scrap of superiority they can find in the darkroom.
That's just sad.
They internally correct the coworker to reassure themselves that they still possess observational skills. They hand the boy the clipboard, the crying stops, and for one fleeting, fragile second, the dreamer feels like a competent provider. They have successfully managed their environment.
But if threat simulation theory holds true, the brain is not going to let them enjoy a false sense of security, is it?
Not a chance. The sanctuary of assumed authority is about to be systematically dismantled.
Because the regression failed to solve the underlying anxiety, so the simulation ramps the pressure back up.
Exactly.
The cycle repeats. The same young boy comes back to the dreamer, crying again, having lost the clipboard a second time. The dreamer simply gives him another one. By the third time this happens, the dreamer realizes there's a systemic problem.
Right. Handing them out isn't working.
They decide to get proactive. They formulate a plan to watch the boy closely after handing over the next clipboard so he won't lose it again. They are finally asserting some genuine management skills, trying to anticipate the failure.
A logical adult approach to problem solving.
But before they can implement this grand strategy, a different boy, a neurotypical boy, walks up and completely shatters the illusion.
What happens?
He points out to the dreamer that the clipboards the dreamer has been so generously handing away to the crying boy actually belong to him. The dreamer hasn't been solving a problem. They have been giving away stolen property by mistake.
Oh, total failure of situational awareness. The dreamer's attempt to impose order actually creating chaos.
The dreamer is hit with a massive wave of apologetic panic. They completely messed up the simplest possible task. They scramble to fix the situation, to reallocate the clipboards, and finally get it right. But before they can move a single muscle, the other male staff member, the very same coworker, the dreamer, was just feeling intellectually superior to, steps in from behind. He looks at the mess the dreamer has made, sighs heavily with sheer disappointment, and says, "Just watch my example."
The ultimate professional dismissal. Let me show you how it's done.
Yes. When the crying boy returns for the fourth time, the male staff member doesn't just hand him a blank clipboard and hope for the best. He casually pulls out a pen and writes the crying boy's name directly on the clipboard.
Simple.
Effective.
It is a permanent, elegant, utterly simple solution so the board can never get lost or stolen again. The dreamer stands there, flooded with intense frustration and a new, burning layer of humiliation, screaming internally, I was going to do that next.
Ah, the battle cry of the outmaneuvered ego. And then comes the final crushing insult. The dreamer looks down at the remaining clipboard they are holding in their hands. The black plastic sheet is fine, but the red study sheet, the specific tool used to reveal the hidden answers, is physically broken right down the middle.
Wow.
It is snapped in half and no longer fits properly onto the board. Okay, we have to explore the phrase, "I was going to do that next," because it is so excruciatingly relatable.
It really is.
It happens in the workplace all the time. You are staring at a spreadsheet, totally overwhelmed, trying to figure out the formula. A colleague walks up, glances over your shoulder, taps 3 keys, and fixes the entire document in 2 seconds.
Yep.
And your immediate defensive reflex is, "Yep, I was just about to try that." It's a lie we tell ourselves to maintain the illusion of competence.
It's a defensive fiction. The ego cannot tolerate the reality that it was fundamentally stuck, so it retroactively claims ownership of the solution once it's been revealed.
Right.
But let's connect that feeling to the brilliance of the broken red sheet symbol. This is where the mechanics of the dream's metaphors are most potent. What is the function of the red sheet again?
It hides the questions so you can test yourself, and when you move it, it reveals the right answers. It's an answer key.
Right. It is a mechanism for decrypting information and mastering an environment. The fact that the dreamer's red sheet is physically broken in half signifies a catastrophic internal realization.
That they are broken.
That the dreamer's internal mechanism for solving adult life is fundamentally broken. They don't just lack the answers, they lack the tools required to even uncover the answers.
They are holding a broken compass, they couldn't navigate the complex social dynamics of the neon room, and now they realize they can't even navigate the basic logistical dynamics of a child's playroom.
Exactly. And the context makes the failure exponential.
Yeah.
The dreamer retreated to the bottom rung of the social hierarchy specifically because they calculated it would be easy to dominate.
Right, I can at least handle kids.
But they failed at the most basic task of resource distribution. They failed to anticipate the consequences of their actions. And they were effortlessly outmaneuvered by the very coworker they had internally belittled just moments before.
The coworker essentially becomes a secondary Tony Robbins figure.
He becomes the shadow competence. He represents the effortless, unbothered authority that the dreamer so desperately lacks. With a single sigh and a marker pen, the coworker exposes the dreamer's deep ineptitude.
Just brutal.
When the dreamer thinks, "I was going to do that next," the broken red sheet is the subconscious holding up a mirror and brutally replying, "No, you weren't. You didn't even have the unbroken tools to understand the nature of the problem, let alone invent the solution."
It is the complete dismantling of the imposter's final defense. The dreamer cannot even succeed at the absolute bottom of the ladder. They are failing in the dark.
Rock bottom.
Now, having hit rock bottom, wallowing in the realization of their own incompetence, you'd think the simulation would end. But the ego has a survival instinct, and it makes one final, bizarre, completely irrational surge before the collapse.
The mind attempts to artificially overwrite the failure with a delusion of grandeur.
The dreamer is sitting in the dark childcare room, holding the broken red sheet, feeling immensely frustrated. They look back over the invisible wall at the brightly lit elite party next door. Suddenly, without warning or logic, the literal spotlight from the party shifts away from the gurus and shines directly onto the dreamer in the dark room.
Oh, wow.
Despite having just failed completely with the children, a massive wave of completely unearned superior confidence washes over the dreamer. They sit back on their cheap sofa. They cross their legs in what the text literally describes as a stereotypical successful person posture.
They are physically mimicking the shape of success, hoping the reality will follow.
Exactly. They are entirely faking it. They even have an imaginary waiter come over to change their wine glass. They pose with their arms spread wide, draped over the back of the sofa, genuinely believing that the tide has turned.
The delusion is real.
They believe that it is finally their turn to speak, that the gurus have recognized their hidden genius and are ready to revere them. They are fully buying into their own hyper-real delusion. But as they hold this arrogant pose, they look over at Tony Robbins.
Then what's Tony doing?
Tony is still there, and he is still giggling at them. The posture isn't working. The elite are not fooled. And at that exact agonizing moment, a new character enters the simulation.
Here we go.
A scientist in a wheelchair, explicitly named in the text as Hopkins, which is an undeniable dream distortion of Stephen Hawking rolls directly in front of the dreamer, completely blocking their view of the party and physically cutting off their spotlight.
A masterstroke of timing by the subconscious.
I have to admit, when I first read this, I was totally baffled by the sudden cameo. Why Hopkins? Why deploy a wheelchair-bound theoretical physicist right at the exact moment of the dreamer's perceived arrogant triumph?
What was your initial thought?
My half-baked theory was that the brain just needed a boss-level intellect to interrupt the dreamer, someone even smarter than Tony Robbins to put the dreamer in their place. But the wheelchair element feels too specific to ignore.
Your instinct about the boss-level intellect is part of it, but we have to look at the archetype Hopkins represents to understand how the dream is tying all its threads together.
Okay, archetypes.
Yeah, in Jungian psychology, the mind uses archetypes like the wise old man or the shadow to represent complex intersections of the self. Think about what Stephen Hawking represents in the global cultural consciousness.
Well, genius, obviously.
Yes, he's the ultimate synthesis of two extremes. On one hand, he is the embodiment of undeniable, world-altering peak human intellect. He explored the literal mechanics of the universe. On the other hand, because of his battle with ALS, he also represents profound, visible physical limitation and vulnerability.
Oh, wow. Wait, he is the intellectual equivalent of Tony Robbins, but physically he mirrors the developmentally disabled child from the dark room.
Exactly. The subconscious is weaving the entire architecture of the dream into a single avatar.
That is incredible.
The dreamer has spent this entire night oscillating between two terrors. The fear of intellectual inadequacy, represented by failing in front of the gurus, and the anxiety of managing physical and developmental limitation, represented by the crying child. Hopkins represents the collision of both worlds.
And what is his action in the dream? He doesn't lecture the dreamer. He doesn't laugh at them.
He simply crosses their path. He literally and metaphorically blocks the artificial spotlight.
His mere existence shatters the dreamer's delusion.
Because his presence is an undeniable truth cutting through a hyper-real fiction. The dreamer is sitting there, crossing their legs, pantomiming success, swirling imaginary wine. It's a cheap costume.
And Hopkins is real.
Hopkins' sudden appearance is the brain screaming. No matter how much you pose, no matter what aesthetic of wealth you adopt, genuine, world-changing genius, combined with real, agonizing human struggle, will always instantly overshadow your superficial posturing.
Ouch.
The dreamer's attempt to fake competence is dwarfed by the sheer gravity of true complexity. And Tony Robbins' continued giggling from the sidelines confirms the verdict. The arbiters of success aren't revering the dreamer. They're laughing at the pathetic, transparent attempt to fake it.
The facade completely collapses. The ego circuit breaker finally trips for good. There's nowhere left to hide. The synthetic wealth on the Nylon beach was inaccessible. The sexual and social competence in the neon room was a humiliating joke. The intellectual authority over the children was a complete failure. And the final arrogant pose of success was eclipsed by a man who represents actual intellectual triumph amidst severe physical reality.
Stripped of absolutely all pretenses, the dream engine powers down the interior sets and moves outward for a devastatingly blunt conclusion.
The theatrical machinery of the threat simulation is swept away, leaving only the unvarnished core anxiety. The scene shifts one last time. The dreamer is no longer inside the building with the neon lights or the dark playrooms. They are standing entirely outside.
Out in the elements.
It is pouring rain, and the text notes that the rain carries a deeply sad, melancholic, almost final atmosphere. A vehicle pulls up through the downpour. It is described as a private, high-speed ambulance.
An ambulance.
3 paramedics step out into the rain. But the journal specifies that these aren't emergency trauma medics. This is a highly specific organization that operates by gently persuading rather than physically forcing people with severe life difficulties or developmental disabilities to temporarily enter a care facility.
An intervention of relief rather than coercion.
They are not agents of force, they are agents of compassionate surrender. Then the front door of the building opens, and out walks the little boy, the very same boy from the dark room who kept crying and losing his broken clipboard.
The child returns.
He walks out into the cold rain, and despite being a small child, he looks up at the paramedics and speaks with terrifying, razor-sharp adult clarity. He says, and I quote, "If I stay a child, I'll run out of money and won't be able to live."
Wow.
Having delivered this devastating line, the little boy voluntarily climbs into the back of the ambulance and is taken away to the facility. And right as the ambulance disappears into the rain, the dreamer wakes up.
It is a chilling and profoundly heartbreaking final image.
When I read that quote, "If I stay a child, I'll run out of money and won't be able to live," it stopped me cold. Because that is not child logic.
No, no, no.
That is the most distilled, brutal adult anxiety you can possibly articulate in language. The contrast between the gentle, persuasive paramedics offering a safe haven and the harsh, unforgiving economic reality of the boy's words is staggering. We've talked about projections and archetypes. Is there any doubt that this boy is the dreamer?
There is no doubt. The boy is the ultimate, unvarnished projection of the dreamer's true self, stripped of the suits, the wine, and the ego.
Every single bizarre, convoluted event that occurred previously in this dream was just a metaphorical manifestation of the fear articulated in that one sentence.
Exactly. If I stay a child, I'll run out of money and won't be able to live. That is the core architecture of the humiliation.
It is the ultimate explanation for the competence trap.
Yes. Think about the economic reality of late-stage capitalism. It demands flawless adult competence. The Nylon beach, the incredibly wealthy gaming YouTubers, that was the terror of being financially excluded from a modern world where wealth seems arbitrary.
Right.
The sexual performance test in the neon room, the elite self-help gurus laughing, that was the terror of social inadequacy, the fear that everyone else received a manual on how to be a successful adult while the dreamer is just faking it.
Just trying to figure it out on the fly.
The dreamer internally feels like a child masquerading in a grown-up suit, constantly messing up, constantly losing their clipboard, which represents their tenuous grip on adult responsibilities.
The competence trap dictates that the harder you try to fake being a capable adult, the more exhausting the performance becomes, until your self-conscious is begging for an intervention.
Exactly. The rain at the end is symbolic of reality washing away the exhausting illusions. It washes away the neon lights, the luxury sofas, the forced networking, and the high-class parties. All the artificial metrics the dreamer thought they needed to master to be safe.
Just completely gone.
When all that hyper-real architecture is dissolved, what is left? A terrified inner child standing in the freezing rain, realizing they fundamentally lack the tools to survive in the demanding adult world.
And the ambulance.
The boy volunteering to get into the ambulance is the dreamer's subconscious finally surrendering. It is a desperate plea for a respite from the crushing, relentless pressure of adult existence. The mind is saying, I give up. Take me somewhere where I don't have to pretend to know the answers anymore.
It has been an absolutely incredible architectural journey. I mean, we started on a squishy synthetic beach, physically locked out of the joy of the wealth class. We moved into the suffocating neon panopticon of social and sexual humiliation.
Yeah, quite the ride.
We tried to steal validation from the gurus, and when that failed, we hid in a dark playroom trying to assert a fake authority over children, only to realize our own decryption key was broken in half. We tried one last arrogant pose, which was shattered by the reality of true genius and struggle.
And
finally, we ended up standing in the cold rain, facing the profound, terrifying realization of our own foundational anxieties about survival and money.
which highlights why we do these deep dives. It proves that the media and the culture we consume in our waking hours, whether it's the lifestyle content of YouTube gamers or the relentless optimization demands of motivational gurus, it does not just evaporate.
Right.
It sinks into our cognitive mapping. It is constantly being digested and remixed by our minds into these unvarnished truths, wrapped up in bizarre, terrifying threat simulations. Our brains are relentlessly trying to force us to look at the exact anxieties we spend our days trying to ignore.
It certainly makes you want to pay a lot more attention to what your brain is screening for you at 3 a.m.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. The next time you find yourself in a meeting or a social event and you feel that familiar, icy grip of imposter syndrome,
You all know it.
the next time you feel humiliated or inadequate in a room full of seemingly successful people, I want you to pause and ask yourself a fundamental question. Are you actually failing at their game? Or is your subconscious just terrified of losing your clipboard in a socioeconomic system that relentlessly, unforgivingly demands that you perform an impossible version of adulthood?
That's a great question.
What is the artificial nylon sheet covering the deep, terrifying, but ultimately authentic depths of your own life? And more importantly, are you brave enough to cut through it, even if it means admitting you don't have all the answers?